Hello, everyone. This is Robert Robinson and Linda Ossie here in the RECAP offices, RAD headquarters, if you will. Thank you for everyone who's joined us. We're excited about the new RAD resource desk and hope that you all will be as well. What we're going to cover this afternoon is just some general information about the changes to the resource desk and then specific information that impacts you as PHAs. We're doing trainings for all different resource desk user types, and those of you who have been in RAD for a while know that there are lots of different folks that use the resource desk, and so we're making sure that all those folks are getting trained up. We're just kind of doing it a priority status, so we're doing these all day, every day for the next few days to get everybody up to speed. So here's the new resource desk. Hopefully some of you have had a chance to go there and at least see what the new site looks like. If you haven't had a chance to log in already, that's fine. But a few things that you'll notice just on the site itself, you'll notice that we have two components are now weighed equally. The old resource desk was very heavy in the RAD for PHAs world and not so heavy in the RAD for multifamily, formerly known as the second component. But now we've got equal footing on both and lots of information for the general public in each area. One of the things that you'll also notice is I haven't logged in yet, but there's still lots of information available to the general public. So for example, if you go to the RAD for PHA spokes and you click on the document library, you'll see that we've created a variety of categories, and even though we're not logged in, we're still seeing some information. So if I was new to RAD and I wanted to find out what RAD's all about and kind of getting started, here I would see some of the documents that we posted up for that. If I was already in RAD or knew a little bit more about it and I was interested in, maybe financing the conversion or something like that, I would click on the plus minus there and I would see all of the tools associated with that section. These are not new documents, but they are reordered, the documents that were in the old document library. So we're hoping that this is going to be easier for people to use and more kind of more comprehensive from that perspective. These will also be available, and I'll show it to you in a few minutes when we log in as a PHA. They're also available once you log in as your user type, and then you'll see more information depending on what accesses that you have there. So Linda, if you go to the home page, similarly, for the document library, also all of the trainings and the webinars that RECAP has done are posted in this section. So you'll see that the various webinars that have been posted for a long time, and then some of the new ones that we've put up over the last few years. So all of those webinars, all the information's in the same place, just different organization for you all. Okay. Another piece that we've added is a way to handle the FAQs and generally getting information about the program. So if you click on the search button, sticking with the theme of putting things in categories and making it a little bit more easy to follow, we've created a series of categories inside of broader groups. So if I was looking for information on CHAPs and more specifically what a multi-phase award looked like for CHAPs, I would get this information. RECAP really wants to focus people's attention on the notice. So now when you do a category search or any search on the resource desk, the first thing that's going to come up will be references in the notice. And then when you click on that reference in the notice, the actual notice language comes up for you, so you don't have to go into the notice itself. All of these notice references have something to do with the multi-phase award, so hopefully you get a general guide from there, and then more specific information as you flow down the page. If there were documents available to the general public, you would see documents on multi-phase awards posted there. There aren't any, but then there's a question about the multi-phase award in the general FAQs, and so you can see that here. So hopefully, again, the idea is to tailor the search results more specifically to the user and what they're likely looking for. The other thing that RECAP is asked to do, which we think is very nice, is all of the various notices related to RAD are all in one place for you now. So we're into RAD notice provision 3, so that's the most recent one there. You can pull that up, but you could also, if you're interested in knowing what changed from revision 2 to revision 3, you can easily pull up that black line version there. And also, many of you are aware of the supplemental fair housing and relocation notice, the relocation notice, which has been posted here as well. And in the bottom section here, you'll see the most recent version of the notice in kind of a table of contents format. If you wanted the whole notice, you could download the PDF from the top. But if you just wanted to read a section, you knew kind of what you were looking for, you can simply click on the plus minus, and then you get the entire section of that part of the notice. And that works down the whole page. So the whole notice now is easily broken up for you, and you can look at things and read through it as you will. Okay? Just so that everyone sees, the RAD for multifamily side also has the similar sort of thing. So if you clicked on the document library for the multifamily folks, they have a slightly different document library and different way of looking at things. But again, all of the various information is there for them to review as well, also broken into separate categories. Okay. So that's the main change, kind of, obviously some look and feel changes, but those are the main changes on kind of how people can get to the resource desk. Oh, the one thing that I forgot to mention is applying to the resource through the resource desk. You can now do your RAD applications through the resource desk. You are going to need to create a login to do this, but when we get to that section, I'm going to show you how a PHA can do that. But all the applications are now going to come through the resource desk, and you won't have to email them to RAD applications email box anymore. Okay. So we're going to log in as a PHA in just a second, but one of the things that I wanted to mention was another enhancement to this, the resource desk, is the ability for individuals to have a single login, but be able to view multiple PHAs. So a number of PHAs out there hire consultants, PCA contractors, just general RAD consultants, that sort of thing. And in providing them access to the resource desk, those users are actually used to have to have a single sign-in for each PHA that they were working with. And what we've done now in the new resource desk is we've consolidated that so that users can have a single login and be able to get to their portfolio, if you will, of PHAs that they're working with. So that's a nice new feature. It doesn't change the PHA's responsibility of providing access to those users. So all of that stays the same, and the user administration piece is the same. But it just means that the person who's the consultant that is working with multiple PHAs will now be able to have one login and see a portfolio, if you will. So Linda, let's log into the resource desk. So whenever anyone logs into the new resource desk, there are going to be a series of cards that folks have. So if you could collapse the properties card for a second. Yeah, so there are a series of cards that come up. We've logged into to our friend in Durham, North Carolina. Meredith, thank you for letting us do this. But you'll see that on the left-hand side, there's a notification card, and this will show anything that's happened since you've last logged in. So if you were looking for a transfer of assistance approval, for example, or you've been going back and forth on an FHEO review, this is where the notifications will come. So if your FHEO approvals come through, you'll get an email that you've always gotten from the resource desk, but you'll also see that notification here just as a reminder every time you log in if something's happened since you were here last. This is, I think, going to be very helpful just to keep people aware of what's happening. And if you happen to have missed a notification from the resource desk, or that one went into your spam for some reason, you will always get a second chance at being told that something has happened. Staying on the left-hand side, you'll notice that we have the user administration. This is a functionality that you've always had, but now it's going to be a little bit more easy for you to get to. You'll be able to provide approvals to new requests. You can see that there are two folks that have asked for access to this housing authority, and as the primary user, Meredith can go in and give her access, give those folks access to it. It also lists out all of the various users and what status they have. So in this case, there are a number of active users, one inactive, and then the type in the middle, each user type can be upgraded to a notification or an upload capability. And so if these users had been upgraded, that upgrade would show there. If they're not, they're just going to be blank because that's just a general kind of read-only type. But that's how you would know that. Okay. Then staying on the bottom of the page, another piece that Recap was very excited about adding was the ability for all of the reserved units for a PHA to show up in one place. Many of you are aware of the power of using a portfolio award or a multi-phase award, and in some cases even using CAT agreements. But there was, in the old resource desk, it was very difficult to track where all those were. So in this case, if there's a portfolio award, you simply click on the portfolio award and you would see what was there, how much of the reservation existed, how many units were still remaining in that reservation, and when the date was that they expired. So this is a nice place for all of that information to be captured. Okay. So Linda, scrolling back up to the top. So before I open up the most, quote unquote, most important card of the My Properties with Chaps issued, this interim card here with the applications, this is where you would first of all see any applications that are being reviewed. This is something new for PHAs. You used to just email your application into the RAD applications email box. You knew it was being reviewed, or you hoped it was being reviewed, but you really didn't have any kind of confirmation of that. This will provide you that. You'll have an application status. It'll say it's under review, and hopefully getting close to the CHAP issuance. But then if you wanted to create a new application, you would click on the Create Application button, and any properties that you had that were available, in this particular case, there aren't any, but if there were applications that were available, then you could start a new application. Okay? I know that there are a number of PHAs whose AMPs sometimes don't show up as having a valid application, and so if you get to this stage and it turns out you do have an AMP that you want to apply for and it's not showing up, you simply need to send the resource desk a note and we'll get it added there for you. Okay? Actually, you know what, Linda, click on the RAD Home just so that we can show folks. So the RAD Home button takes you back to that main page, but since you're logged in, you now have more access to information. So if I were to go over to the document library, for example, and click on that, now I see that I have a bunch more submit the financing plan documents. So if I plus minus there, all of these items are some of these items are not available to the general public, only to RAD participants. And so now my list is expanded, still inside those same categories, but now I have more documents and more things that I could look at. Similarly, the webinars would also be the same, where if I click on the training, there's some additional information for the various webinars. Working with Residents webinars, I believe, has a couple of additional pieces and that sort of thing. So you get a little bit more expanded use once you've logged in. All right. Go to Profile for just a second. Another new feature of the resource desk in making this more compliant with all of the various government regulations, including what's known as 508 compliance, which is primarily an accessibility requirement, but it also allows for the ability for a user to change their password. Longtime users will know that you were assigned a login and password when you got into the RAD program. Most of you haven't changed that password, and you won't have to change it unless Recap decides they want to implement some sort of password policy. But right now, that's not on the horizon. But if you do want to change it, now you can change your password yourself. We can certainly still do that for you if you send us a note, but now you can do this on your own. It also provides information for users to know what kind of other things that they can do, viewing things and uploading documents and that sort of thing. So just kind of gives a quick user profile. So now let's take a look at some of the changes that we've made on the transaction side. So let's go ahead and select Calvert Place. That's going to have a lot of information for us. So this transaction is actually closed, and since it's closed, the system is assuming that we need to go to the final closing docket and submit that information there. So it takes you immediately to this page. You'll see that there are a lot of certifications and all the things that you've seen before, but we've got a new bar that's kind of this interim bar between the top blue line and then under the white we've created a series of kind of what we like to call working bar. And so what we have here are starting in the far right, we've added a contacts list. So if you click on the contacts list, this is going to give you a card with all of the participants in this particular RAD transaction. So the first page is going to have all of the housing authority information in it, and any consultants or other folks that have been added to the mix. And then the second page is going to provide all the list of all of the various HUD participants. So your transaction managers, your closing coordinators, and then any of the other folks that are involved in this transaction, including the OGC closing attorney, and if it's PBRA, in this case, we've got a hub director and that sort of stuff. So all of the things that you might like to know about who's participating with you in this transaction all in one place. So we think that's going to be helpful and something that a lot of users asked for in this upgrade. And then going to the left, we now have created a few different drop-down boxes. This first one, we'd like to consider kind of being the working pages, if you will, all the various transaction pages where things are happening in information either by you or a transaction manager or another part of HUD, FHEO, for example, are doing work, and you need to kind of see that work as it goes through. Then to the left of that, we've got the transaction documents and data, and basically this is the information that comes from those various working pages, as well as any kind of historical information or chaps, the things that you're used to seeing. So here we've got, if you click on the chaps and related documents, you're going to see all the Chap Amendments for this transaction. So this was at the top of your kind of general page in the old resource desk. We've now pulled this out and made it a specific space where you can go to easily get to from anywhere, but not clunking up a page that you otherwise were trying to work under. So if you go back over to the transaction pages again, you can see that we've created a bunch of different levels for you. So if we go to the readiness/concept call page, you all will remember this one is kind of where things start in RAD. So you get a chap, and you get a readiness transaction manager assigned to you, and you start working through, and this is the information that's getting uploaded. And we're double checking and making sure that is this new construction or rehab transaction. Do we have FHA insurance? Is it tax credit? So all this general information, and then the checklist that gets created as your readiness PM walks through to make sure that you're ready to submit your financing plan. So all of this information is getting populated. Okay, so if I go back to the transaction pages, then the financing plan information. And, you know, I know you all are very familiar with this, which is where all of your documents that you're used to uploading live. So we tried to have a consistent theme across most of the pages where the top card is always going to be the card that has kind of the most general information about your transaction so that you don't have to hunt around and find it someplace else. So in this case, the RAD status is closed. If the financing plan had just been submitted, it would say financing plan submitted. If the RCC had been issued, it would say RCC issued, and it would know what the various pieces are that are important to that section. Okay, so as Linda scrolls down, the ownership data, this is a critical piece. All of you PHAs know that. Recap is always pushed wanting accurate data as far as the current ownership, future ownership, and kind of how that all works. And then as we scroll down, the ever popular signature blocks, making sure that that's all added here. So all of this information is something that you as a PHA will enter. TMs, as you know, can't change this information. So they're looking to you to make sure that it's entered, and you can't get a transaction approved and RCC issued until you have updated this information. So none of that has changed. It's just kind of more centrally located to make sure that you're always taking a look at this. And then the last section of the financing plan is the grid that I know everyone's familiar with. This is not changed. You'll still choose a file and upload it. As you update files, they'll upload on top of the ones that were there before, so you always have the most recent one on top, just like before. You'll be able to write comments into the transaction manager if that's the way you like to work, just like you did before. Transaction managers can write comments back to you, and you can see those. So all of that interactivity that you've always had is still going to be here. And then when you get to the bottom of the chart, the big red button of submitting the financing plan has not gone away, and you'll still need to hit that button to submit the financing plan. Okay? So once the financing plan has been submitted and you got the RCC issued and the closing documents, that's the next big change that we want to just take a look at. So if you go to the closing page, Linda. So this section is going to be a little bit new for folks because I don't think very many PHAs have spent much time in the closing section on the resource desk. But now, just like the financing plan, all of the work in closing is going to run through the resource desk. So again, we've got a nice bar across the top with general information about the transaction. Then we've got your closing coordinator who's assigned and kind of what the status is in here. In this particular case, this transaction is closed. That's fine. If they were waiting for documents to be submitted, it would say pending documents. But let's scroll down and see what we've got. So we now have a bunch of kind of key dates for you to take a look at when the draft package was submitted, when HUD Council provided their comments, the anticipated closing date. All those things are right there front and center for you to be able to see so that you know that your transaction is moving to successful closing. So the next section that we're going to look at is the closing documents upload section. The resource desk knows whether or not this is a PBRA or PVV transaction, and so there's a different grid, if you will, for each of those. So if this was a PBV, that would say upload-PBVs. In this case, it's a PBRA transaction. And then all of the documents that are required for a PBRA conversion are listed here. The PHA is going to then go in and select the file from their computer and upload them. They're going to do that for every required document. So no more emailing in of documents, no more burning of CDs of closing documents. All of the closing packages will now be submitted to the RAD closing coordinators electronically through the resource desk. So Linda, if you scroll down towards the bottom, once the PHA has uploaded all of the various pieces, they are then going to submit the closing docket. Okay? Once that closing docket is submitted, the closing coordinator will get an email. They'll also have a spot on their notifications card when they first log in the next time saying that the closing package has been submitted. And then they'll start doing their review. Linda, if you want to scroll back up to the top for me just a little bit, you'll see that the PHA comments are there where they can write, and to the right of that would be any closing coordinator comments that are written. So you can see, just like you're doing on the financing plan, you'll be able to interact with your various partners at RECAP. We've also added a quick jump box, if you will, this go-to where you can easily jump around this page without having to scroll up and down. So if I wanted to go to the closing document section, it would take me down there. If I wanted to go back up to if I was down a little bit further, I wanted to go back to the property section, I would click there and it would open it up. So an easy way to bounce around if you don't want to scroll up and down throughout the document. Okay. So let's click on the action items section just for a second, Linda. This is a place where the PHAs can do a couple of things, but most importantly, if they need to request a financing plan extension, this is a new piece that they can run through their transaction manager and their team lead. The PHAs can actually send in a request for a financing plan extension if they would like to do that. Okay. So the other big change, in addition to the loading and uploading things in the closing docket section, is in the transaction log. So the transaction log has long been kind of confusing to folks, and you know, the design was well intended, but there was just too much information and things were changing too frequently. And so anyway, one of the things that RECAP asked us to do in this new design is to create a way to simplify things and also to lock things down so that reviews done by transaction managers and closing coordinators can be handled a little bit more efficiently. And so you'll notice that this transaction log actually only has 3 columns. We've done away with the references to milestones, and we've focused our attention on what's actually happening. So the first column is the financing plan submission, and this is the column where the PHA will be entering all their information for the financing plan that they're submitting. So up into submitting the financing plan, all the way until the transaction has been approved and the RCC has been issued, this is the column that you, the PHA, will be working in. Okay. In moving the resource desk data over, we did not move any data for any transaction that didn't have the financing plan submitted already. So that whole idea of the application data or anything else that's been populated prior to submitting a financing plan has all been wiped out, and you're all going to need to start anew with new entries here. For some of you who are close to submitting the financing plan, that may be a little bit unfortunate, but we do believe that the new categories, new descriptions, and the new way the resource desk is working with the sources and uses and the pro forma, it's going to be well worth it because people are going to get more and better information than they have in the past. So in this case, since this transaction is closed, it's actually a good one to look at because you can see one of the pieces that's nice about this is we've now locked these categories down. So you'll see that the financing plan submitted with the RCC issued, we've now locked down the first column here. So all of that information has been captured, and that's kind of the date for the financing plan approval. The column to the right, which I now see is going to need to be updated by us, so we'll make a note of updating that. That should actually have the as closed information for the transaction. So to the extent that nothing changed from the financing plan to the closing, those numbers would be the same. But if there's any changes, that would have to be updated there. From a RAD recap perspective in their review process, it's important that the transaction managers are reviewing that prior to closing, and so we've added a little button where the transaction manager can actually click to say that they have completed their review on that transaction. Okay, and then the last column is if something were to happen after closing and the sources and uses need to be updated for some reason, that's a place for that to be updated at that point in time. Looks like we have a question on this. Let's look over there and see what we have here. So one of the questions about deleting documents. You know, unfortunately, we still are not allowing PHAs to delete documents. So you'll need to just continue to upload the correct document on top of the other one. If it's really something that's critical for you all to take down, I think most PHAs know that they can send an email to the resource desk, and we likely will accommodate that. But RECAP really doesn't want PHAs to be able to delete documents. They like to keep that administrative record, and you know, there's no real downside to that. If you make a mistake, it all ends up being okay. So great question though. So the other big change on the transaction log are in the sources section. So a lot of interesting information comes from the resource desk and data pulls by various folks inside of RECAP and other places. And so what RECAP has designed from a sources perspective is creating 4 major categories of sources. So a source of funds is either going to be hard debt, soft debt, a grant, or equity. So those are the 4 general categories. And inside of each of those categories, RECAP really wants to get all of the information that they can about those various pieces. So if you're putting in hard debt, and it's going to be a commercial loan, you're going to type in the name of the lender, indicate whether it's a first lien or not, then you're going to select that source. So in the example that I was just going through, this is going to be a non-FHA commercial loan, but it also could be a loan from MTW funds, or it could be a state or local loan or something of that effect, a home loan, those sorts of things. All that information is going to be selected here. And then as you continue to walk across, you'll put the dollar amount in, the loan term, the interest rate, the amortization period, confirming that the lender is consented to the RAD use agreement, and then you'll add that information there. So one of the great things about this is it gets all of the information that RECAP needs to kind of quantify what's going on with these loans, but it also relieves the burden of you, the PHA, having to create and upload financing templates. Because once this information has been entered, the system can now create all of those financing templates itself, and so you'll no longer have to submit financing templates. And then every time if you change something, then that update is reflected in the new template and et cetera. We've got another question. So questions came along, so I'm glad this question came over. Just to clarify, so question is, has HUD deleted all of the uploaded files for any financing plan if the financing plan is not can be completed in essence, the PHA has to start all over. No, that is not the case. No documents that have been uploaded have been deleted. The only thing that has not been moved forward is the information that was entered into the transaction log. So the transaction log is what has been cleared out. So this is all. So all of the data, if the financing plan has not been submitted, all of this section here is going to have zeros in it, and those numbers will have to be updated by the PHA. But all the documents and all those other pieces, no, that information all moved over, so you don't have to do anything on that front. Okay. So with a hand raise. Oh, Doug has had a question already. Is that it? No. Okay. Great questions. Thank you all very much. All right, there's another question. Here we go. How many loans can the system can accommodate? I believe. Well, I'm not sure. I think that the system can accommodate probably however many lines the uses are. We tried to match that up. Actually, the system can accommodate as many as you enter. It's just a matter of whether the sources and uses can be produced on one page. So I'll caveat that saying the system can handle as many loans as you want to put in. It's going to look pretty silly if you go to more than, I can't remember, Linda, how many lines we have, 60 lines or something like that on a page. So it may stretch it over, but we tried very hard to not have any limitations on that front. So you should be able to enter as many as you want. The other piece that is going to be slightly confusing at the beginning is, Linda, if you go back to the sources button again, one of the things that we have taken away, if you go in the drop-down box, there's no longer an other category. We have found that for whatever reason, many PHAs, despite the fact that, I'll pick on Deferred Developer Fee, despite the fact that there was a Deferred Developer Fee line item, many PHAs added Deferred Developer Fee as an other category. And so it made it very difficult for RECAP when doing quality control and looking at different sources of funds to pull the developer fee amounts for all the transactions. And so there are no longer a quote-unquote other category that can be entered. So you're going to need to find one of these categories to enter your funds into. If for some reason you come up against a situation where you really do believe there needs to be a new category added, please reach out to the resource desk, reach out through your transaction manager, and we're more than happy to entertain that conversation. But we really do want PHAs to find one of these spots. There are a lot of them, so there should be a place where you can drop in the category of the source of funds. Okay? So let's see what else I wanted to take a look at. We talked about the extensions and transaction pages. Just to refresh people on the transaction pages, just so that everyone can see, we still have the various FHEO pages and PIH pages. All of that information that you're used to seeing and checking on is still there, so none of that's going anywhere differently. But you just get to it a different way. Okay. Another question, Linda. Is the notification center extract, for example, can it be used to communicate with the FHEO? So that's a great question. So the question is the notification section interactive? So it's not interactive in the sense that you can send messages back and forth to people. But go to the FHEO page just for a second, Linda. So it is interactive in the sense that when a transaction is, when an action happens on the FHEO page, for example, the FHEO reviewer's gone through and they've approved the transaction, they upload their file, they put in the approval dates. That notification will be sent out via email, as it has in the past. And then that notification card will show that transaction's been approved or rejected, as the case may be. But it's not like a messaging feature. You're not going to be able to send emails back and forth. It's just another reminder, if you will, of what's happening on the transaction. Okay. So those are the major things that we wanted to cover. I also wanted to let everyone know that on the multiple user front, moving to the single logon, particularly with you as PHAs, where you have consultants that are working on different PHAs and maybe just to that consultant world. If you are having problems, let us know. We're working through. There have been a couple of challenging folks that have had some different roles, and we're trying to make sure that you can still do all the things that you were able to do before. But we'll work with you all to make sure that happens. But again, we're working towards a single login for all users that are working with PHAs on this. This training is being recorded and will be posted as a webinar in the next week or so. So if you missed it and you want to listen to it again, you certainly can do that. We also have another training coming up for PHAs. I think it's Thursday afternoon. An invite went out to this group as well. So if you want to call back in, it'll be the same presentation, but in case you wanted to hear some more. We encourage you to use the new resource desk. Certainly if something is broken, we'd like to know about that immediately. Stylistically, if there are things that you're not particularly happy with as you're working through it, keep a list. Let us know in a few weeks. We're hoping that, after a month or so of use, people will get a little bit more comfortable with it. There's some places that are pretty dramatically changed, and it will take some time, but we do believe it's going to be easier to navigate and, more importantly, easier to collaborate with all of the different players in RAD conversions. So not only with the recap folks and the TMs, but also in the closing group with the closing coordinators and all of those folks. So that's what we're hopeful for. Linda, we got another question. All right. All right, hold on.
What's here? Let's go find the first one in the list.
There are a bunch.
Okay.
All right, can't find.
This is I think a general. So if you're logging on and you don't see your properties, there was a bug this morning that we're working on right now, and that should go away for most of you. If you are a contractor and there were multiple contractors who needed to access a single PHA, that's my last hurdle. And I'm hoping to have all of that resolved tonight. But was going to answer a lot of these. If you fall into any bucket where you log on and you don't see what you think you should see or you saw in the past, the fastest way for resolution is going to be to contact the RAD right here and just get us an email and let us know, and we'll get it back up there as soon as we can for you. And hopefully, other than the fact that the RAD resource desk is sort of sitting here at the moment, and we're kind of all hands on deck here at HUD trying to make sure it transitions nicely, but we're going to try to get all of those resolved as quickly as we possibly can. So that I hope answers a lot of.
Right, and the next question is, if you have had multiple logins with multiple PHAs, you should definitely send us a note because we made, in most cases, we made an assumption based on your last login as to what your login and password would be for you generally, and we may have guessed wrong, and you would prefer to have a different one. So again, send us an email at the resource desk, and we will get on that immediately. As far as the training schedule, the transaction managers were trained this morning, and so that's already happened. If they have issues, they'll be contacting us as well. And then we've got various other trainings going on throughout the week. So we've got a lot of training coming on. You should be able to see all of your documents. That was asked earlier. If you're not seeing your documents or you think you're missing something, let us know. We want to know and make sure. I was able to log on the website. Now I can't. Okay. Try again, is all I can say. It happened to me this morning as well. I logged in, and 5 minutes later, I got kicked out, but I've been back on. So, again, be patient with us because we're going to be making a lot of changes and sometimes having to take the resource desk down. So if you get kicked off, log back on and try again. That would be my suggestion.
And for those of you that submitted questions about your logon IDs right now, I grabbed all of your names, and I will reach out to you guys so you don't have to follow up with the email.
Yeah, so everybody that's asked a question, we know who you are, and we will get back to you after this call by the end of the day.
I'm just clicking one more time.
Yep.
Do you see any of this?
Yeah, I see. Well, thank you all very much for your participation, and we're looking forward to having everyone use the new resource desk. And if you have problems, let us know. All right. Thank you, everybody.